Your body is what the universe is. Structure and process at every scale. Look at your hand. Not the skin or the particular shape of your fingers, but at the fact that it is both things simultaneously, a structure and process. It has form, bones arranged in specific relationships, tendons running their particular courses, the architecture that makes it recognizably a hand. And it has a function, blood moving through it right now, electrical impulses traveling its nerves, the continuous metabolic activity that is the difference between a living hand and one that is not. Stop either one completely, and you do not have a damaged hand. You have a different kind of thing entirely. Anatomy and physiology, structure and process, the where of the body and the when of the body. Every medical school in the world teaches them as separate disciplines, and every good physician knows that they cannot be actually separated. The structure exists to enable the process. The process maintains and expresses the structure. Neither precedes the other. Neither is more fundamental. They are irreducibly paired, each constituted by its faithful relation to the other. This would be interesting enough if it were not only true of the body. It is not only true of the body. If it were, okay, you figure it out. The same pairing at every scale, too. Consider the atom. At its center, the nucleus, spatially located, structurally stable, the organized where around which everything else is arranged. Around it, the electron's orbital dynamics, not a fixed position, but a probability, a process, a temporal activity that cannot be pinned to a single location without ceasing to be what it is. The atom has an anatomy, the nucleus, its structure, its spatial organization. The atom has a physiology, the electron's motion, its energy states, its temporal process of change and expression. Remove either and you do not have a simpler atom, you have no atom at all. Consider the galaxy. The spiral arm's visible form, that organized structure traced across hundreds of thousands of light years, is anatomy at astronomical scale. Flowing through and sustaining that form, the vast electrical currents that plasma physicists call Birkeland currents thread along magnetic field lines, driving the galaxy's ongoing processes of star formation and matter organization. The galaxy's form and the galaxy's process are not two separate phenomena that happen to coexist. They are the same phenomena seen from two directions simultaneously. Consider the cell. The membrane defines the boundary, establishes spatial organization, maintains the structural distinction between inside and outside that makes cellular life possible. Anatomy. The metabolic processes within, ion channels opening and closing, mitochondria cycling energy, the continuous work of cellular respiration, physiology. The membrane exists because of and for the processes it enables. The processes occur because of and within the structure that contains them. From the smallest unit of organized matter to the largest structures in the observable universe, the same pairing appears, not approximately, not metaphorically, the same irreducible two-sidedness, spatial structure and temporal process, each requiring the other, neither reducible to the other, both together constituting what the thing actually is. 3. The physical basis of the pairing. Here the physics become relevant and must be stated carefully. James Clerk Maxwell's equations, formulated in the 1860s and still foundational to all of physics, describe something that initially surprised everyone who encountered it. Magnetic fields and electric fields are not two separate phenomena. They are two aspects of a single underlying electromagnetic reality, each generating and requiring the other. A changing electrical field produces a magnetic field. A changing magnetic field produces an electric field. They do not merely coexist, they are constitutively paired, each the condition of the other's existence. What they do, however, is genuinely different in character. The magnetic aspect of the electromagnetic field is the spatially organized, structurally locating aspect. Magnetic fields provide the framework within which charged matter arranges itself. They define regions, establish orientations, confer stability and form. The image is made visible through a ferrocell, iron particles suspended in oil, revealing the toroidal, phi-proportioned forms of a magnetic field, show the spatial structure that was always already there, made suddenly visible. The magnetic field is, in the most literal physical sense, the spatial anatomy of the electromagnetic phenomena. It locates, it holds, it gives the organized matter its where. The electric aspect is the processual, transforming, temporarily active aspect. Electric fields drive current. They are the agency of change, of energy transfer, of movement through time. Where the magnetic field locates and holds structure, the electric field moves and transforms. Electrical activity is inherently temporal. It is a process, a flow, an irreversible sequence of events. It is the physiology to magnetism's anatomy. It gives organized matter its when, its aliveness, its capacity for change, its irreversible movement forward through time. Maxwell's equations describe precisely how these two are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot change one without affecting the other. And the mathematical relationship between them is not one of addition but mutual constitution. This is not a philosophical interpretation of the physics. It is the formal description of how the physical world actually behaves. What follows is that the spatial temporal pairing observed as anatomy and physiology in the body, and as nucleus and orbital in the atom, and as galactic form and current in the galaxy, has its basis in the fundamental structure of the electromagnetic field itself. The universe is not incidentally organized into structure and process at every scale. It is organized this way because the field underlying all organized matter is itself structured this way, irreducibly and without exception. The body, in having anatomy and physiology, is not displaying a biological peculiarity. It is participating in the universe's most fundamental organizational principle, the one that runs from the atom to the galaxy without interruption. 4. Consciousness as anatomy and physiology. The neuroscientist Todd Murphy proposed in a 2019 paper in the Journal of Consciousness Exploration and Research that consciousness is an intrinsic property of magnetic fields. The claim is specific. The human brain contains approximately 5 million magnetite crystals per gram of tissue, organized into chains called magnetosomes, generated by the brain itself rather than absorbed from the environment. These interact with the brain's larger magnetic field. Neural electrical activity generates magnetic fields which propagate through the magnetosome network faster than electrochemical processes alone, providing, Murphy argues, the integrating and unifying substrate through which disparate neural regions achieve the coherent experience we call awareness. Murphy's most structurally useful observation is this: the primary characteristic of consciousness is the subject-object relationship, the capacity to be oriented toward something, to perceive and respond. And the most elementary physical model of a subject-object relationship is a two-pole magnetic field, in which each pole is defined by and oriented toward the other. The spatial structure of the magnetic field, its anatomy, is already a kind of orientation, a towardness built into the physics itself. What the electrical activity adds is the processual dimension, the continuous updating, the moment-by-moment transformation of the field's content as sensory input, memory, and response flow through it. The brain's electrical system is its physiology, the temporal process that animates and continuously modifies the magnetic structure that holds it. Consciousness, in this account, is neither purely magnetic nor purely electrical. It is the irreducible pairing of spatial structure and temporal process, instantiated at the level of the brain with sufficient organizational complexity to become aware of itself. The magnetotactic bacterium navigates by its magnetic orientation, the most elementary spatial awareness, the organism knowing where relative to the geomagnetic field. The human brain, with its billions of magnetite crystals integrated with its vastly complex electrical system, does what the bacterium does and incomparably more, not because it is a different kind of a thing, but because it is the same kind of thing elaborated across billions of years of evolution into extraordinary complexity. Billions? Murphy's hypothesis remains to be confirmed experimentally, but its structural logic is consistent with everything this essay has been observing. The pairing of spatial structure and temporal process is not a feature of biological systems specifically. It is the universe's own organizational grammar, and the brain instantiates it as consciousness in the same way the atom instantiates it as orbital dynamics, and the galaxy instantiates it as form and current. 5. What this means. The body is not a machine placed inside a universe that happens to have electromagnetic fields. The body is what happens when the universe's fundamental organizational structure elaborates itself to the degree of complexity that permits metabolism, awareness, and at the furthest reaches of that elaboration, the capacity to look back at the universe and recognize its own structure reflected there. Your hand, right now, is doing what the atom does and what the galaxy does. It is being, simultaneously and inseparably, a structure and a process, an anatomy and a physiology, a spatial organization and a temporal unfolding. It is not doing this because biology borrowed a trick from physics. It is doing this because there is, at every scale of organized matter, only one organizational principle: the irreducible pairing of the spatial and the temporal, the structural and the processual, the magnetic and the electrical. Jiddu Krishnamurti said, "You are the world, and the world is you." This essay is the structural account of why that is literally, physically, demonstrably true, not as a spiritual aspiration, but as a description of what organized matter is and how it behaves, from the atom to the galaxy to the living body reading these words. Your body knows what the universe is because the body is what the universe is, locally, intimately, at the scale most immediately available to direct experience. The pairing is not invented. It is found. It was there before any observer arrived to notice it. That is part of what makes noticing so remarkable. Pause here. Look at your hand again. The essays that follow will pursue the most surprising consequences of what you are looking at.